Hi, I'm Gary Stearman of Prophecy Watchers, and I have a question for you. What do you know about Mystery Babylon? Mystery Babylon, what a subject. We have an author, Doug Woodward, with us here today. The book, The Final Babylon. And before we start talking, Doug, I'd just like to say that you are probably way up there in stature when it comes to studies concerning Mystery Babylon the Great.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And I have spent a lot of time studying these issues and probably, for better or for worse, become associated somewhat with the position that the Babylon of the last days is the United States.
And you just came right out and said it.
I did.
And I have my Bible open to Revelation 18 and verse 10, and we read about the kings of the earth standing far off for fear of her torment, saying, Alas, alas, that great city, Babylon, that mighty city, for in 1 hour is thy judgment come. And I just wanted to read that to set the tone for this discussion, because that's just one aspect of the Babylon question.
There are so many. To begin, we could talk about the fact that throughout the Bible, Babylon represents or is a symbol of opposition to God. There's the city of God, and then there's the city of Babylon. Now, of course, modern theology would have us believe that that's all she is, that Babylon does not actually represent a future, we'll call it an instance of a city that is a real space-time city that is destroyed in the last days. I think that there are sort of three phases of Babylon: the daughter of Babylon, Mystery Babylon, and Babylon the Great. And the United States, I believe, is associated primarily with the daughter of Babylon that's talked about in the Old Testament prophets, particularly Jeremiah.
Yes.
And Jeremiah had prophesied that the captivity of Babylon, which was really related to Judah, would last 70 years. And Daniel, reading Jeremiah, saw that the prophecy was soon to be fulfilled, and he began to pray that God would be true to his word and that captivity would end. And then in 538, without firing a shot, the Medes and Persians came in at Belshazzar's feast and took control of the city of Babylon and ended the Babylonian, what's known as the Neo-Babylonian Empire, and began the empire of the Medes and the Persians.
And so Babylon faded away, but only in a physical way, because the whole idea of Babylon, the spiritual idea of Babylon, lived on.
It did, and this is one of the areas of great confusion, because when you look at the prophecies about the daughter of Babylon in Jeremiah 50 and 51, it speaks of Babylon being devastated, and it talks about it being laid waste, such that no one will be able to inhabit it. Well, that's not what happened historically with the old Babylon. It, in fact, even after it was taken over by the Medes and Persians, eventually Alexander the Great conquered them, and he made Babylon his capital city. So it was still very much inhabitable at that time. So the question is, what Babylon are we talking about? What Babylon is Jeremiah talking about?
Now, let's really get down to what Babylon is. Is America Babylon, for example, which is deeply discussed? Is Europe Babylon? Remember the 10-nation common market?
Indeed.
A lot of people thought this is Babylon, Mystery Babylon, come to life at last. And of course, that went away. And people are still talking about it. But why is it important to locate Babylon geographically as the Bible does in the latter days?
Well, I think it's because there are several factors. Certainly there are very specific prophecies talking about destruction of Babylon.
Yeah.
And so I believe that there are many prophecies that repeat again and again and again that this nation shall be destroyed. Well, if we are that nation, that might concern us just a bit.
It might concern us a lot.
Yes.
And Some people have come right out and said it. America is Mystery Babylon the Great, the one that's described in Revelation. I just read the verse concerning a lot of spectators watching the death of Babylon.
Right. Yeah, there are really in today's amongst us futurists that believe that there are prophecies yet to be fulfilled. There really are sort of three views about Babylon. There is the view that I hold, the daughter of Babylon relates to not just America, but sort of the Anglo-America empire. There's the view that that the revived Roman Empire will be the power base of the Antichrist. And what's really happened in the last 10 years, since you and I talked about these things a number of years ago, is that the arising of the concept of the Islamic Antichrist has become a very significant factor in the minds of many futurists. So much so that today, the concept of the revised Roman Empire, which is still held by some great brothers of ours, is kind of declining. And you have really a view that's been put forth primarily by Joel Richardson, a great brother, great ministry, great missionary, but his theology is very different than ours. And we could talk about that perhaps in a moment. But just to cite some of the folks that do believe that Babylon, the United States is Babylon, I'm not alone in that point of view. You certainly have the old Frank Logsdon of the old Moody Church.
Yes.
Our friend Noah Hutchings, the late Noah Hutchings.
That's right.
You have R.A. Coombs, a gentleman named Patrick Heron. There's a list of probably 10 or more. Even J.R. Church talked about the possibility that America could be the final Babylon in his book, The Guardians of the Grail.
That's right. He did indeed. And so we come to the present. And you and I look at the world the same way. We're watching, and it is, things are coming apart, to say the least.
Yes, they are.
And in a biblical sort of way, the way the Bible said they would,
Right.
which causes us then to take another look.
That's right.
At what's going on. By the way, I'd like to just mention that we publish a monthly magazine here called The Prophecy Watcher, and I know you read it, and if you don't, you should.
I know. I even wrote an article for it some time ago.
But we believe it's a great magazine.
Each month, the Prophecy Watcher magazine arrives in thousands of mailboxes all around the world. Our newly expanded 48-page magazine features cutting-edge prophecy teachers writing about things you may never hear about in church. Gary Stearman, Randall Price, Thomas Ice, L.A. Marzulli, Bill Salas, Jonathan Cahn, and many others. Examine the giants of Genesis 6, the future wars prophesied in Israel, the rapture of the church, prophecies about the Antichrist and the tribulation, the rebuilt Jewish temple, the book of Revelation, transhumanism, artificial intelligence, and so much more. You can subscribe to the digital version of the Prophecy Watcher for $20 a year, subscribe to the print version for $30 a year, or for a very limited time, we're offering a lifetime subscription to either the digital for $100 or the print magazine for $150. It's the gift that just keeps on giving. Just call the toll-free number on the screen or visit our online bookstore to take advantage of this limited time offer.
Now, having said that, let us go ahead and draw some conclusions, because I know that those of you who are with us today want to hear, well, what really is Mystery Babylon the Great today? And I want to hear, Doug, tell me what it is.
Well, there's a number of ways to answer that question. There's certainly a verse, I believe it's in Revelation 16, that talks about Babylon is a city divided into three parts. Well, that's interesting. What exactly does that mean? Well, as we read on in Revelation, we understand that there is a mercantile or commercial Babylon. There is sort of a military political Babylon. And then there is a spiritual Babylon, which is usually associated with Babylon or the Mystery Babylon. And so you have all of those factors in play in talking about that. But if we get specific about what might it be that causes us to think that the United States is the final Babylon or one of the final Babylons in the last days. Certainly, we just have to look at things geopolitically. In terms of the United States is the number one nation still, although China's nipping at our heels in terms of gross national product, GDP. We both have about a $25 trillion national GDP figure. So certainly commercial Babylon, which, by the way, is talked about in Ezekiel 28, and the Prince of Tyre and the merchants of Tarshish. All of this ties in, I believe, to the Canaanites, which became the Phoenicians, which became Tarshish, which I believe is a forerunner to the Anglo-Saxon world and even the United States. So that's another study of its own.
And by the way, that involves money and banking.
It does indeed.
Global banking.
banking.
And that's a big part of the picture.
It is a huge part of the picture, because the United States dominates not only militarily. We have 20 aircraft carriers.
Right.
China has one. Russia has one that's so bad it has to have a tugboat pull it around. so we're pretty dominant in terms of our Navy and so forth, and our Air Force. So we're very dominant there. We're very dominant commercially. Certainly, all the kings of the world, if anything happened to, let's say, New York City, where so much of our commerce is based, they would weep, because it makes them rich. And so that is a major factor. Spiritually, and we may talk about this in another program that we may do in the future, there's the issue of what is the core spiritual view of the United States. Well, it tends to be very occultic, very Luciferian. That is sort of our natural native religion. Christianity is, well, we like to think of ourselves as a Christian nation.
Absolutely.
There are certain politicians that don't agree with that.
But a lot of the power structures in the United States of America, sadly, are occultic. And that would include the major research centers, that would be aeronautics, rocketry, the high-tech aspects of Silicon Valley.
Yes.
There's a lot of occultism happening in those places.
There's a very sinister connection between technology and spiritualism, which itself is a study that's far too deep for us to go into today.
Right.
But it's something to be aware of. So anyway, if you look at all of these major factors of what characterizes Mystery Babylon, the United States certainly seems to fit the bill, and no other nation right now does. So the late Chris Putnam, who wrote a foreword for the book, The Final Babylon, made the point, which is that if the Lord were to return today, there really is no doubt that the United States would have to be Babylon, because it's the only one that qualifies.
And having made that statement, I want to take us to just another interesting locale, which happens to be under the label of fascism. Now, you've written a lot about that in your book, and you ask the question, so just how fascist is America's economic and political structure today? And then you go through a numerical list.
Yes. There are many facets of fascism, which I don't mean to make the alliteration there, but there are, and it really has to do with the combination of corporations and government. And the intermediary is this thing called the lobbyist. And it causes we like to have the view that there are free markets and that capitalism in the United States is all about free markets. The reality is that it's mostly about corporations creating monopolies and dominating monopolies. And that's really more the story of the United States economy than it is the free market.
But it's not just the economy, it's the soul of the country. And we're being called the cancel culture now. And that culture is sort of the background of what you're talking about. Yeah. It likes to control public thinking, ideas. And, Mystery Babylon the Great is remarkable for the same thing. It sort of comes in and erases the thoughts that made America great. We're a Judeo-Christian based nation.
Right.
And fascism and neo-Babylonianism run counter to that, and I think we're seeing it today.
Well, in fact, if we go back about 70, 80 years and we look at what happened in Germany the fascism. Fascism was in fact invented by Mussolini in Italy, but Hitler quickly globbed onto it. And basically you had a PR program that essentially said everyone must salute Hitler, hail Hitler, or Heil Hitler.
Heil Hitler, which
Right.
means to salute Hitler.
Yes, and so you had the courts essentially eliminate all opposition. Even the church, the evangelical church, which we might call the Lutheran Church, had to give sway, as did the Catholics. And so that's a long story in the whole evolution of fascism in Hitler in Germany in that period.
But it's a recurring story.
It is a recurring story.
And sadly, we're watching it happen today.
That's so true.
And so this book, you started it a long time ago.
I did.
Relatively speaking.
Right.
And you and the book and societal change have all grown together, and here we are, and things are happening.
Right. Yeah, I predicted when we got together about 9 years ago and talked a bit about this, that the United States was not ready to collapse at that time. That the collapse of the United States would happen at some point in the future, primarily associated with the death of the dollar. And where we are right now, we are at the cusp of the Great Awakening, the Great Reset. What is the Great Reset? Well, it's being instituted by the International Monetary Fund, the World Bank, International Bank of Settlements, all of these mechanisms that are predominantly set up and established and dominated by the United States, that it's going to do this Great Reset. What is that going to mean? It's going to mean that the fiat currencies and our paper money is likely to all disappear. Just as in China, all of the transactions essentially now happen on smartphones. The paper currency is being eliminated. And what we're seeing right now is the probability that banking is getting ready to dramatically change. That there may be one central bank, not a central bank of the United States, not a central bank of Europe, whatever, but one central bank, a world bank, and one digital currency to make it easy to transact activity financially anywhere in the world. If you have the smartphone, or later maybe a certain mark that appears on your hand or your forehead.
So you said that is not a phone. It's a camera and it's a bank.
Yes, indeed.
It is your banker.
That's right.
And you're carrying it around. And do you remember 20 years ago or so, it was very, very common to talk about a cashless society.
Indeed.
And that phrase has kind of faded away as an old-fashioned phrase, but in actuality, it has not faded away at all.
No, we're all finding it easier when we drive through the fast food place and grab a hamburger just to put in our card with its chip in there and pay for it and drive on. It's too easy, actually.
Too easy. Yeah, you got that right.
Yes.
Now, we've kind of, I think, hit all around the central issue of this book. Again, it's called The Final Babylon. Doug Woodward well, if he's known for one thing, it is documentation. Every time I read one of your books, I'm astounded at how well documented everything that you say actually is. And this is very true of this book as well. You don't say something unless you back it up.
Yeah, I believe the true work of the apologist is that you have to defend the faith, and you have to be willing to go into sort of the court of public opinion. So while I write my books, hopefully so that our Christian brethren find them easy to read and so forth, I also am trying to write books in such a way that you can pull information from them, and you can talk to unbelievers, and you can back up what you say. And that's a lot of what I do.
And a lot of what he does is touch on subjects that nobody else does. For example, is Russia destined to nuke the U.S.?
Yeah, not a popular topic.
Not a popular topic, but you have tackled it.
Right.
And you've tackled another one that's not all that popular in some circles,
Right.
mistaken identity, the case against the Islamic Antichrist.
Yes.
What I'd like to say about Doug is that he has this curiosity. And having talked with you by the hour, at
Right.
one point in our lives, we
Right.
spent quite a bit of time talking, and you've got a curiosity that just won't stop, and you translate that into writing in a wonderful, wonderful way And thank you very much.
Well, you're very welcome. Yeah, I think it's a gift, and it's also a drive that the Lord gave me, is that I have to know, I have to understand. And so if there's an issue that comes up that challenges me, I feel like that I have to go read about it. And certainly that's one of the issues, probably the most dominant thing there, the case of what I call the mistaken identity, the case of against the Islamic Antichrist,
Right.
is that is such a prominent thought in our culture today, and it conflicts with so much of the conventional teaching on the end days, end times, that I just had to dive into that and understand that. I've gotten to know Brother Joel Richardson, who is, as I mentioned earlier, he's a great guy. We even debated this issue to some extent, and did it at another ministry. And I really believe that it's a challenge. Real quickly, he believes that the Antichrist is the same as Gog, is the same as the Mahdi, or the Dajjal in the Muslim world. That the Battle of Armageddon and the Battle of Gog and Magog is the same battle. And so you go through all these things and you realize that, and probably the big one is that the nature of who Gog and Magog is Turkey, that it's a regional conflict, that the Bible is just a regional book, he argues. And I tend to think that John was really emphatic when he said that, every nation, every tongue, every language would all bow the knee to the Antichrist. That he was really trying to say the whole world, not just the Mediterranean.
Well, here's what I like about Doug. He doesn't just stop in one place. The Antichrist, the discussion about the Antichrist is very important to us now. And
Yes.
we need to be thinking about him. And in particular, when you look at the last few years and our relationship with Israel, which was basically at an all-time high, but I think it's dropping fast now.
Like a stone.
Yeah. And so we have all these amazing things happening, which I believe you've covered very well in the Final Babylon, along with documentation, I've got to tell you. And by the way, I'd like to just pause for a moment and tell you how you can get your own copy of the Final Babylon.
Who could imagine that one man, a man the Bible calls the Antichrist, would have the power to control the entire world? Scripture tells us that no man will be able to buy or sell unless he has the mark of the beast in his right hand or forehead. Can you see the handwriting on the wall in our world today? One question in the mind of prophecy students is where America fits into Bible prophecy. Are we the daughter of Babylon? Are we doomed to nuclear destruction by an unknown enemy? Doug Woodward's book, The Final Babylon, makes a strong case for America as the wealthy nation that sits upon many waters, a nation facing God's judgment. At this point in time, no other nation on earth fits the biblical parameters of Revelation 18. Doug's exhaustive study on Babylon is available for your gift of $40 or more. In addition to the Final Babylon book, we've included a live, hour-long message on the subject delivered just recently at the last Trump Prophecy Conference. This book and DVD comes with free shipping in the USA. Just call the toll-free number on your screen or visit our online bookstore. If you'd like to familiarize yourself with Doug's other important studies on the subject, we've included 2 additional books as part of a package we're calling the Doug Woodward Final Babylon Package. For your gift of $75 or more, we'll send you the Final Babylon book, the Final Babylon live DVD, and 2 timely and extremely important books, Is Russia Destined to Nuke the U.S., and Mistaken Identity, The Case Against the Islamic Antichrist. These 2 books bring the future of America clearly into focus. Just call the toll-free number on your screen or visit our online bookstore to take advantage of this exciting offer. As we enter these increasingly uncertain times, we know that we can trust the Lord to protect His church. When Revelation 18 arrives and judgment falls on Babylon, believers in Jesus are safely in heaven, raptured and removed from God's wrath. Our deepest desire is to keep as many people as possible out of this terrible time the Bible calls the tribulation. Will you support the important work of prophecy watchers and join us in warning the world of the trouble that may be just over the horizon? Thanks for watching today. We want to be a blessing to you. Keep watching and keep looking up. Jesus is coming soon.
And I hope you will avail yourself of Doug's book. It's like Doug himself. It's you arouse curiosity. Every time you and I sit down and have a conversation, I start bringing up topics that are just I don't usually talk about, and
Yes.
off we go.
Yeah,
and
well,
that's the way
right.
your book is.
Yeah. Well, I've tried to write about things that interest me, that I think should interest others. Now, granted, I'm probably not going to have my books appear on the New York Times bestseller list, like Brother Hal Lindsey did, but I still think for those that are students of the Bible that want to know more, that's kind of who I write for. So folks that watch this show are my audience as well.
Now, let's wrap it up here. We started out, I read Revelation 18:10, the great city burning and the whole world watching.
Right.
That's a metaphor, but it's an actuality as well.
I believe that it is, and I believe that the words of Scripture about the destruction of Babylon, they just did not apply to the old Babylon on the Euphrates and the Tigris. There's a view that maybe that's going to be rebuilt. Can you imagine how long it would take to rebuild a city like that?
Yeah.
So it becomes the dominant city in the world?
Long time.
Not going to happen.
And I don't think we have that much time.
I don't think so either. The Scripture's, though, very clear in Jeremiah 50, verse 23. It says, how the hammer of the whole earth is cut asunder, how Babylon has become a horror among the nations. There's a factor about Babylon that clues us in, that this is, the destruction of Babylon is you might say, a giant wake-up call to the world. Now, I happen to believe it's actually tied into the battle of Gog and Magog. And so I believe that all those factors are in play here, and that this is going to culminate in that great war we call the War of Gog and Magog, and that will actually usher us into the final 7 years of world history till Christ returns. But you and I believe that probably at that time of the War of Gog and Magog, we may see the rapture occur.
Could very well. And in fact, we are looking for the soon, and I really feel that with all my heart, coming of the Lord Jesus Christ. And I talk with Christians all the time. There's an excitement abroad unlike anything I've ever seen in my whole life. I know you have met the same thing.
Indeed. Yes,
and so I keep writing.
Right.
Keep after it. Bring us another book.
I will.
As soon as possible. And his name is Doug Woodward. It says on the cover, S. Douglas Woodward, but everybody calls you Doug.
The nom de plume.
And it's been good talking with you.
Thank you. I enjoyed
and
it.
By the way, keep watching.
I will.
We are.